So I've got Tom on the show today once again, and we're going to talk about John Waters.
Hey!
Hey, who I believe it or not, the first time I ever heard of John Waters was The Simpsons,
Yeah.
because obviously he's on that episode where Homer thinks Bart is gay.
This is a brilliant episode.
Yeah. And it was praised at the time. I was worried that I suppose now it's a little bit kind of gay panicky because Homer thinks, oh my god, Bart's gay, and they go to the steel mill and stuff like that.
Mill, yeah.
But yeah, that's the first time I ever heard of John Waters. It was from that. I didn't know who he was.
Right.
Just he's that guy from The Simpsons. Yeah. So after that, I mean, in terms of the films, obviously he's quite. What am I trying to say? So he does have sort of quite a wide-ranging back catalogue that people kind of put in different categories. So there's his early stuff, which is really, 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 really rough.
Yeah.
So his first full-length film he made is a film called Mondo Trasho, which is black and white and doesn't even really have any dialogue in it. It's literally... I'm trying to think of a sort of easy comparison. I suppose it's kind of similar to something like Scorpio Rising by Kenneth Anger, in that it's basically literally just kind of 50s and 60s pop music, and there's a bunch of stuff going on in black and white.
Kind of like, a Mondo film in a way, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay, but it's probably not that interesting. Unless you're like a completist, you probably don't really need to watch it. And that was followed by Multiple Maniacs.
Yeah.
Which is also in black and white. And we talk about Pink Flamingos in a minute. If people think Pink Flamingos is really amateurish and really cheap, it's like Multiple Maniacs is even more amateurish than that, if you can believe it. It's again black and white, but it actually has kind of dialogue this time. And it's got, in a way, a very similar story to Pink Flamingos. It's very enjoyable. It's got a lot of transgressive elements in there. But again, it's super, super rough. Which is interesting because I think... Do you think, just this is a total incidental aside, but do you think people kind of take the whole, like, how a film looks thing too seriously in terms of basing a quality of the movie?
Yeah, and definitely with John Waters.
Yeah.
It's not a straightforward yes answer, so I should have added more to that, but I agree with that. I don't think... the substance of the film is definitely more so than just how it appears, particularly if it's low budget. You have to give a little bit of leeway with a low budget film. Everyone's got to start somewhere. I mean, John Waters especially doesn't really kick off until Pink Flamingos, but those early films are sort of, I guess, him getting his grounding, getting his early work. They're almost like pre or pilot movies, you know.
It's kind of like him kind of working out what his spiel is,
and
and his most successful, most well-known film, I think, is the next film. So it's Pink Flamingos, which would be a more obvious choice for a show like this.
Yes, it would be,
but I didn't want to go down that route.
Almost too obvious,
yeah. So Pink Flamingos is kind of the film that people kind of have heard of most. It was very popular in the midnight movie circuit back in the day. It is very, very infamous for good reason. It's got a very, very, very... Offensive is probably not the right word, because this is the thing about John Waters films, is that I don't see how people could find them offensive, but they are trashy.
Trash is the word I was going to pick up on here.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of times trash is referred to in John Waters, and the Pope of Trash is nicknamed the Pope of Trash. He's very good at not making offensive films. These aren't films that throw around that try to make you throw up.
It's not The Beast in Heat.
No, exactly. they're bad taste done in a jolly way. You know?
They're kind of upbeat, happy films. Yeah, in a strange sort of way.
They're all very upbeat and happy, really, despite the subject matters. You know.
Yeah, they're not films where kind of horrible things happen to people. They're very, very unique, because it's like, how do you classify them? Because some people classify them as like exploitation films, but I don't think they really are that exploitative.
I think John Waters is very good. I mean, this is basically like punk cinema. He's very good at playing with things that should be offensive. It's very self-aware, very artistic. You know, he could make a better film, but he's choosing to make films which are a little bit designed to wind people up.
Yeah, he's making films sort of within his means. So
Yeah.
whereas sort of Mondo Trasher and Multiple Maniacs are kind of more in the vein of like an Andy Warhol or like a Kenneth Anger or a Jack Smith type very, very low budget American, almost experimental film.
Yeah.
With Pink Flamingos, it's more about the narrative. So there is an actual story and there's actual characters. And that, although Divine was in Multiple Maniacs and he was kind of the main character, he definitely became super, super famous after Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, for sure.
And which moves us very nicely into the next film, which is Female Trouble, which is probably my favourite Waters film that I've seen.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's very, very Divine heavy. If you like Divine, this is probably the best film of his oeuvre for you. As I say, it's, again, every film he made is sort of more and more and more professional because it's quite an interesting cycle.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say of kind of his up to kind of the 1980s, I would say, I don't know, this is the film that I kind of enjoyed the most.
Female Trouble, that is.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's got a rawness to it, but it's not super, super raw. Like Pink Flamingos, it has a lot of scenes where it's just, I don't know, Divine wandering around and there's like a 50s pop song in the background for like 5 minutes where it's not really doing anything to advance the story.
Yeah.
Or like where you've got the guy with the singing arsehole. Like, that's not really like... it's not really advancing the plot now, is it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Female Trouble, it is an actual kind of, again, it's a more developed narrative.
Yeah, Pink Flamingos is like almost like just a checklist of things which are grotesque or offensive, which is okay in itself, and I understand why everyone holds Pink Flamingos up.
Yeah.
I know we're going to get to Desperate Living in a moment, but Desperate Living is also a checklist of things which are offensive and grotesque, but there's more of a story to that, and that kind of follows on from Female Trouble, which, as you say, is more story than shock, whereas Pink Flamingos is more shock than story.
Yeah.
And then the third one, as we'll discuss, I think is a little balance of both, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now, Female Trouble is quite interesting in that it's definitely got a set structure in that Divine's character at the start of the film is at school. I think it's meant to be like 15 or something.
Yeah.
And then, she gets basically raped. It's more jolly than that sounds, believe me. But basically, she has a child, and it's her kind of growing up to womanhood.
It's the life cycle, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it kind of stays, after about a third of the way into the film, it kind of stays at that sort of same age. And things like that. And then we move to Desperate Living, which, again, we're going to... Obviously, this is what we're talking about on the show, so we're going to talk about it in a lot more detail. But again, it's more kind of evolved again, matured again. I think because of the success of Pink Flamingos, Waters had more money to play with. Now, in relative terms, it's still not that much money, but for a film like this, you can definitely tell that there's more money
build
involved.
Sets and they have artificial prosthetics and things like that.
But again, it's still kind of trashy. He's still using the Dreamlanders, which we're going to go on to in a minute, sort of his troupe of actors in Baltimore, which is where all his films are set. I don't know, the later films, are they still set in Baltimore as well? Or is it just up to like
I'm pretty sure
polyester?
Serial Mum is. Pecker definitely is. Hairspray is. Crybaby, I'm not sure. But my money would be yes. That seems to be his little, like I was saying in between recordings, that's his kind of Tromaville, except it's real.
Yeah, so we'll go into Desperate Living in a lot more detail in a minute. And then he made Polyester in 1981 with Divine, but it's the first film of his that looks glossy and professional.
It's his first mainstream film. The early films are fun, but that's him playing around. And this is him moving more into... I don't even want to say mainstream, but let's just say not just making shocking pantomime.
He actually had proper money.
Yeah.
His films, they actually look like how other films, more mainstream films, would look at the time.
And it shows that he's not just a one-trick pony. It's not just grotesque pantomime. Hey, I'm John Waters. I can also do straight up, comedies.
Yeah, so whereas, I don't know, in my opinion, just retreading what I've already kind of said. So Modern Trash Show is okay. You can probably live without watching that one. Multiple Maniacs I like, but it's incredibly low budget. Pink Flamingos, you kind of have to watch it. It's one of these films. It's one
of those ones which is cult canon, as I call it. If you're a cult fan and you haven't seen Pink Flamingos, you have to see Pink Flamingos. It just is.
Yeah, it's not a good film in the traditional sense of the word, but
there
you
are
kind
better
of
John Waters films.
have to watch it because it's the most notorious one. And Female Trouble is my favourite. Desperate Living I like as well. I'm going into more detail of that. Polyester I like, but from this point, it's obviously there's an edge being taken off his work because it's more mainstream and it's kind of more. The rough edges are being taken off. It's kind of less. It's not less subversive. The subversiveness is still there, but it has to be more palatable for a mainstream audience.
I feel it's my least enjoyable of the mainstream ones. I would be tempted to say you could pass on it. Obviously you wouldn't because you need to watch all John Waters movies. But I mean, if you compare this to some of the later ones like Cry Baby and Serial Man, they're way more fun.
Yeah, and Polyester, interesting. I know we're not talking about Polyester on the show as such, but it's being released by Criterion. And like you said, when the films came out, you had sniff cards.
Yeah, Smell-O-Vision.
Smell-O-Vision. And you said like the version that you had didn't have it. Well, the Criterion version does have those.
I'm going to buy 2 copies. One so I can do it, and one so I can have it perfect.
Yeah. And then he made, I know, possibly his most well-known film, which is Hairspray, which is a musical. Obviously, Divine is one of the main characters in it, but the main character is played by Ricky Lake, the talk show host, weirdly. And yeah, that was, I think, the first John Waters film I actually saw was Hairspray. And it's fun.
Yeah.
Again, it's very it's kind of like a PG kind of John Waters film in a way. It's sort of very fun. Turned it into a musical.
Yeah, musical. It's
and
been
they remade it with John Travolta.
Doing Divine.
Yeah, oh god, very strange. But yeah, it's a fun film. It's a good film.
Still subversive. It deals with race issues and stuff.
And then we're kind of getting into the modern, kind of inverted commas modern John Waters territory. So Cry Baby, which I've not seen. Starring Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I would say Cry Baby and Hairspray compete for being the most sort of successful or most loved of the mainstream ones.
And then Serial Mom, from what I understand, is Waters' favourite film that he made, or he thought it was his best film that he had made, which I've seen. And it's kind of fun in a sort of blackly comedic way because it's Kathleen. You've got Kathleen Turner is this nuclear family. She's the mum, and she kind of kills people for what are petty reasons.
But we can all sympathise with her.
And yeah, it's fun, I guess, but yeah, it's just weird watching a John Waters movie and you've got well-known Hollywood actors in there. It's just very, very strange. And then after that, he made Pecker, which I've not seen.
Pecker's good. I think Pecker's tends to get forgotten about. I think it deserves more attention and more praise. But it's fairly low-key, and that's probably the reason why. But it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable.
Cecil B. Demented.
Which is a weird one, because he made it in collaboration with, I think, a French company. He either didn't write it, or basically it's not 100% John Waters film. It's a collaborative effort. But if you haven't, if anyone who hasn't seen it, that is definitely worth watching. It's fucking amazing.
Cool. And then the final film that he's made to date, and this is from 2004, so it's quite a while ago. It's 15 years. A film called A Dirty Shame,
which I didn't particularly enjoy.
Yeah, now, from what I understand, and you can obviously correct me on this, Tom, but basically, that's him apparently going back to his roots, so to speak.
Exactly.
Is he doing like a St. Anger?
Yes, and just like St. Anger, it doesn't quite hit the mark. If you're a director and your style has evolved, sometimes it's not great to go back and try and relive your hits of your youth. And also, and you've picked up on this a lot, there's something about the rawness and edginess of the earlier films, the grittiness, the low-budgetness, that you can't just recreate. You can't just press rewind. And it just feels a bit... And also, some things only work within the time capsule, the context of when they came out. And to try and it'd be like trying to make a Karen film now. It just doesn't quite hit... Things have moved on a little bit, and it just... Dirty Shame, when I watched it, I just didn't it didn't feel like the old films. It didn't feel like the new films. It's a bit of a letdown, frankly.
Yeah. So don't watch that film. But I mean,
you definitely don't need to do that. And the sad thing is, you say like it's 2004.
Yeah.
John Waters has said in interviews before he feels sorry for film directors now because he struggles to get. The reason he's not making films is because he's like, it's impossible to make those kind of films anymore. It's difficult to get the funding. Everything's changed. He's not really he's not into making films anymore. And David Lynch said the same thing, you know.
Yeah, hence why he hasn't done anything since Inland Empire apart from the new Twin Peaks, which is
Twin Peaks and music.
Awesome.
Yeah, he does a lot of music now as well.
Yeah, so that's the filmography. We'll kind of go into, because I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to throw Tom's way sort of as we go along. Now, kind of touched on it sort of when we were talking about the filmography, is the Dreamlanders. So these are John Waters' own sort of troupe of actors that are people who are friends of his or acquaintances in Baltimore, the most well-known of which is Divine. Mm-hmm. But there are also Mink Stoll, Mary Vivian Pearce, Cookie Mueller, Edith Massey, and David Lochary. So people like that. They're kind of the main kind of Dreamlanders.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about Desperate Living, because we're going to talk about that now, Divine is obviously more closely related to John Waters.
Yes.
Divine is not in Desperate Living. Now, the reason that he's not in Desperate Living, although he was supposed to be, is that he obviously got very successful following Pink Flamingos, and he had started working in theatre, and he was basically double booked. So basically, he had a gig, he couldn't get out of it, so hence he couldn't be in Desperate Living.
Yeah.
And the other kind of absentee from like his core kind of group of actors is David Lochary, who had a bit more of a kind of, well, he wasn't double booked, he was dead. So as to why he couldn't be in the film.
Permanently double booked.
Yeah, so unfortunately he had died the year Desperate Living was made, 1977, of a drug overdose. So
That's very sad.
Hence why he couldn't be in the film. But he's got, I would say, a main kind of core group of actors that appear in most of his films, at least up to kind of this film, Desperate Living. And then they're kind of, some of them are still in the films. I think Mink Stoll is still in pretty much all his films, but not necessarily in like a lead role.
They kind of have cameos.
Yeah.
Serial Mum, there's one or two cameos of the earlier people.
So yeah, of the Dreamlanders. So yeah, Mink Stoll is kind of, now it's interesting because the lead character kind of changes throughout the film.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I was kind of going to, but she is kind of, you assume is the main character. So she's Peggy Gravel. Great name. Love that name so much. Edith Massey is in the film as the evil Queen Carlotta.
She's the best.
Mary Vivian Pearce is in the film as the Princess Cuckoo. And there's a few other kind of actors who appear in other John Waters films that may be a bit less well known. So the maid, who's Griselda, played by Jean Hill, she appears very briefly in Polyester. She's getting on a bus. But I don't know if she's in any of his other films. And the role that was supposed to be played by Divine as Mole McHenry is played by Susan Lowe, who again was in like Female Trouble, but in like a smaller role. This is obviously the most well-known kind of John Waters film role, I should say, that she's in. So that being said, what is the story of Desperate Living, Tom?
Right, I suppose. Okay, so there's a housewife who, her and her maid kill her husband, so they have to go on the run. They discover there's a place where criminals can go, and
which is Mortville.
Which is a place called Mortville. A place where criminals can go and hide and live. So they go to Mortville. Mortville is this ramshackle community, and it's run by a tyrannical queen who takes great pleasure in humiliating the villagers. Peggy and her maid, they move in with a lesbian couple. Then the film is basically a series of flashbacks and little origin stories of some of the characters. And gradually, Peggy moves into the... It's a film about social climbing.
Yeah.
And also vaguely political and activism, I suppose.
And class as well.
Yeah, class. Yeah, social climbing and class. Because Peggy comes from initially a sort of well-to-do family. She goes to Morville. and she's with the rest of them, the scum of the earth.
Yeah.
And then gradually incorporates herself with the queen and becomes the queen's new favourite.
The whole time she's in Mortville, she does kind of think like, well, these people are peasants. I'm better than these people. Like she's in this position that she kind of doesn't seem to kind of understand that she's got herself into, and that she's on the run and she's hiding in this kind of what is basically a shanty town.
Yes.
Essentially, with all these kind of outcasts of society, and she's kind of very delusional. And she's not aware that, like, no, these are my people now because I'm on the run for the police. Although that's kind of an incidental thing. The police don't, they're not really that involved in the film.
There is a policeman.
Yeah,
who likes to wear women's underwear and tells them where Mortville is. And the film kind of climaxes, I suppose, with a sort of, I don't know what you would call it, sort of lesbian activism, or because a group of the lesbians of the town decide to rise up against the Queen of Mortville and have a mini revolution and appoint a new queen, which is one of the two lesbians who were first introduced to.
Yeah, of course.
There's multiple themes going on.
Yeah, there's actually quite a lot going on.
And that's aside all the random funny little things that happen and grotesque little acts that happen.
Yeah, so like a lot of films that I talk about on the show, there's two ways to look at it. There's kind of look at all the gross shit that happens. Yeah. There's that side, and then there's the actual kind of film criticism, subtexty kind of shit.
Yeah.
And, I like to give both. Yeah, I'm not one of these people.
And this film definitely has both.
Oh, yeah, without question. I would say, I haven't read up a lot about his other films, but I would say probably this is the one with the most kind of subtext in it. I can't imagine Pink Flamingos has a lot of subtext.
It's funny when you were mentioning your favourite was Female Trouble.
Yeah.
It had the best or most narrative, had a decent narrative, let's put it that way, had a decent narrative. Because these three films, Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, Desperate Living, are known as his Trash Trilogy. So it doesn't include the earlier ones that you said, the experimental ones, or when he goes mainstream. This is like his holy trilogy.
Yeah.
And they're very, very, like, different. The first one is just, for me, Pink Flamingos is, like I said, a tick list of goofy, gross shit.
Yeah.
Female Trouble has less of that and is more narrative focused. Whereas Desperate Living is my favourite of the three because it seems to be a nice balance of the two. There is way more goofy shit happening in this than in Pink Flamingos. So if you love your grotesque and you just want to sit there and have a laugh with your friends, there's plenty to see.
There really is, yeah.
And it has a narrative, but whereas Female Trouble is the story of the rise and fall of an individual, this has, as we've already discussed, levels of political analogy in there, so you can be serious and goofy with this film. Yeah,
you can take it in kind of both ways. And when I first saw this film, because I've got to be honest, Tom, you're much more knowledgeable about John Waters than I am, hence why we're doing this show.
Hey, thank you.
And so the only films I'd seen up to kind of when we watched them were Pink Flamingos and Hairspray.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting when you watch these films kind of back to back. Sort of Pink Flamingos is kind of, like you say, it's quite offbeat.
Yeah.
It's not really meant to be taken that seriously at all. It's just, throwaway. Yeah, like I say, look at all this random shit or literal shit kind of going on. And then you got Female Trouble, which again is still kind of upbeat and is kind of fun, purely because of Divine mainly, but yeah, you got other stuff in there. And then this is very different. It's not depressing, but it's less jovial.
Yeah.
It's a lot more kind of, even straight away in the first kind of 5 minutes, which is awesome, by the way. You can tell just the main character Mink Stoll's character just shouting every line, sort of pitch of Isabel Johnny in Possession level, almost like hysteria, kind of just this neurotic woman, like the most neurotic woman ever. Some amazing lines. I think that's another thing, because people talk about the acting in these films. And it's like, traditionally, yes, the acting is not good.
Yeah.
But it kind of works better than a lot of these kind of films because of the actual lines themselves, I think, and that's John Waters.
Yeah,
kind of writing all these lines.
The writing and improvisation is brilliant. The acting is, it's pantomime acting.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work any other way. And it's all very deliberate. It's not
theatrical.
Yeah, no. it's not accidental bad acting like
No.
you might get in, say, Troll 2. Everything is to me very meticulously almost designed to be consumed as trash, as opposed to just being trash.
Yeah, and you notice it's his actors who deliver those kind of lines the best, who have been in multiple films of his.
Yeah.
Because they kind of, I think, know the right pitch. So there's some great lines I wrote down from Mink Stole. So they get she gets a phone call and it's a wrong number, and she's like, how can you ever repay the 30 seconds you've stolen from my life? Just amazing. And this is kind of why, again, we're talking about why a film might be a bad date movie. There's a scene where two children are naked in their house.
It was the 70s, man.
And then she's like, oh, the children are having sex. And like, oh my
Sodomite.
Yeah, like, oh, like you could be pregnant or whatever it was she was saying. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, my favourite line from Mink Style, she does have quite a few in this film, but my favourite is, so after the husband is murdered, so her and the maid are kind of on the run. She has this great line. It's like, look at these disgusting trees stealing my oxygen.
Stealing my oxygen. My favourite lines in this, I got two. Okay,
Awesome.
So very at the beginning, when she's shouting at the children, she's like, go home to your mother. Doesn't she ever want you? This isn't some communist daycare centre. Communist daycare centre is beautiful line. And then the Queen, later on, when she's telling the guards to take her daughter away, they're like, seize her and fuck her. Just the authority in the voice of seize her and fuck her. It's just beautiful. Beautiful, snappy, bitchy lines is what John Waters is good at.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And it's just, if you've never seen the film before and you're watching this, and you're like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, is this woman going to be shouting for the whole film? Now, luckily, she's not, because
She mellows down a little bit, but there's a lot of shouting.
There is a lot of shouting, but it's
so much energy, yeah.
When you kind of watch it a second time, you kind of know more what to expect. It's like, okay, I kind of get sort of the pitch that this is aimed at the moment. One of the things that the film's touched on is like is class, like we said, and also I think kind of because the film is seen as a satire, and on authority figures and things like that, and so we've got the Queen. The Queen's the most obvious example, but there's also the policeman, and the policeman is this very perverse figure who kind of is wearing women's underwear, makes them take off their underwear and puts it on himself, and then has some kind of, I don't know, orgasm sort of on the floor and stuff like that. It doesn't, I say that can only be there just, I think, as kind of a critique of, the authoritarian kind of structure in place or something like that. I don't know.
And you ask, like, why don't the police attack Mortville? Well, clearly the police know about it, and they're in cahoots with the Queen.
Yeah.
They're totally fine with it,
Clearly they must be.
And it's a straightforward, let's just take the piss out of the police,
Yeah, and also I think it's not an accident that all the soldiers are dressed in like kind of S&M garb, sort of all leather, and the kind of very fetish
boys,
again, it's a very, again, Kenneth Anger kind of those kind of films. Interestingly, I mean, so Kenneth Anger, Andy Warhol, another one. I was reading up on John Waters, kind of his kind of inspiration and stuff. Herschel Gordon Lewis,
he's a massive
fan. Which, if you've ever seen a Herschel Gordon Lewis film, you'd probably not be surprised by that. Even people like William Castle, Russ Meyer,
William Castle,
people like that, again, not really surprised.
No,
I guess.
I think he played William Castle in a film about, I think, Betty Davis or something, or was made for TV, and he had a cameo playing William Castle. It was fucking brilliant. Just a throwaway thing there, sorry.
No, it's cool. So what is about this film that you would kind of put above all the others? Is it that you say it's kind of, you've got the trash elements, where you've got like the subversiveness and to say there's a lot of pretty fucked up stuff in this film, but you've got the story as well.
Like I said,
it's right in the middle of his kind of development.
Like I said, you've got if you like Pink Flamingos, because it's got the gross and shocking stuff, this has that, but more so. If you like the narrative of female trouble, this has even more narrative. This has even more development. This basically has... I just pick up on something you said earlier about the sort of jovialness of the first two films. This has the jovialness, but also has a serious point to make. And that's what I like about it. Okay, you can never get bored watching this. That's why I wanted to watch it again today with you. Now you've watched it 3 times in 2 weeks, but you still seem to have enjoyed it. There's so much happening in this film, so you can enjoy it just for sitting down and having a good time. But it's got a serious point to make about class and about authority, which the other films don't. Even later ones don't. You know, the more mainstream ones. This is him going, you know, he's got a point. He's got a point to make with this, but it's not pretentious and up its arse. It's still a jovial John Waters movie at the same time.
Yeah. You've got we're talking about this in terms of all the fucked up stuff that happens in the film. So we already mentioned the policeman. You've got when Peggy and Griselda arrive and they're taken to the Queen, they get force-fed cockroaches. I mean obviously not real cockroaches, but still, that's pretty fucked up. Lots of nudity in the film. But what I like about films like this is nowadays, we've talked about this before, everyone has to be pretty in films now. Like, there's no kind of... This is going to make me sound very kind of like, I don't know, a certain way. That's not really the point. But it's... I'm not saying... Not everyone has to be, you know, size 6 or a size 4, like, really young and pretty and stuff. Like... It's almost like these films are like a celebration of kind of different body types and stuff like that. Like, so, you know, Edith Massey, you know, would she be in this type of role if a film was made today? No, probably not.
And the actors involved, people like Edith, they know that they're, for lack of a better term, ugly or grotesque or whatever. But of all the cult directors out there, and everyone says cult is all about celebrating the other. John Waters really celebrates the other. So Edith, being this grotesque old lady, he really has fun with that, and she has fun playing that. Divine, maybe not in this film, but in other films, you know, Divine is not exactly would not win RuPaul's Drag Race. It's not a good drag act, but that's the point of the his drag act. And as you say, other characters, that celebration of you don't have to be perfect, and that's the point, and there's a perfection to the imperfection.
No, I mean, Divine has a lot of charisma, a lot of star power. It's like, I kind of wonder with this is going to make me sound like an old fogey, but I kind of wonder, like, today where the next, like, Jack Nicholson is going to come from, because Jack Nicholson, right, I had this conversation on another show, and I was like, no, Jack Nicholson's really hot, and this is with a woman, but no, the point is that Jack Nicholson is probably, all right, if you just looked at Jack Nicholson, he's not a conventionally attractive person, but he has so much charisma and so much presence. And Divine has that, and Edith Massey has that, definitely. I mean, traditionally not a great actress. So you pointed out that she flubs a line that they kept in the film, but it doesn't matter, really. Touches that we liked in the film. So obviously there's the portraits in the castle, the Queen's Castle.
Absolutely love the portraits. You've got Charles Manson, Hitler, and Idi Amin. And we had a little discussion. Idi Amin, perhaps they thought Idi Amin was going to be... Because that shows the age of the film. That shows the time the film was made. Because Idi Amin, just a little boring dictator bit here, he wasn't in power for that long. Okay? He's not like Gaddafi, who was in power for like 40 years. There'll be people who probably don't know, who will watch this now, probably don't know who that is. But it just goes to show that he's very topical, and to go from Hitler and Charles Manson and include Idi Amin in that.
I mean, if they'd done it 20 years later, they'd have put Saddam Hussein in there.
Exactly.
Or like the Shah of Iran. Actually, that's probably a little bit more cult. Or who's a dude from like Southeast Asia, the really bad dictator who killed those.
Pol Pot?
Yeah, Pol Pot. That's what I'm thinking of.
The really bad. This is my area. This is my area. Dictators. You know.
Of course, you're my history buff.
I'm just.
That's it. And yeah, lots of nudity just generally, as I mentioned, sort of in
Mm-hmm.
the film. So you've got various sex scenes that are no way titillating whatsoever. Absolutely not
But that's the
titillating.
point. Like, so the maid that, again, talking about body types and not conventional. Yeah, let's show the maid naked. She's this larger, plus size woman, for lack of,
Yeah.
I don't want to use offensive terms, but
But no,
it's
that's
plus size, and
plus size,
that is done. That is done to make you squirm a little bit and be uncomfortable.
And like male nudity, I think films from this period that have a lot of male nudity, it can only be to like make people uncomfortable.
To make people uncomfortable, but it's a weird combination of, it's not just make you uncomfortable in a Human Centipede or Serbian film way. It's make you uncomfortable but make you giggle at the same time. It's very pantomime, immature at the same time as
like
being grotesque.
When we watched like Gestapo's Last Orgy or like Salon Kitty, which is again that scene is kind of taken from Salon Kitty as well. You got all these naked men and naked women like in the gymnasium. It's like a similar thing to that.
Yeah.
Is that there is no way that you would find anything like that titillating, but yeah. And there's the naked volleyball stuff as well.
Oh, yeah, the nudist colony.
Lots of weird touches, like in there's a scene that takes place in I don't know if it's meant to be like some kind of bar.
Yeah.
I don't know how they would set up a bar in
There's a bar in Mortville. Everyone's got to go for a drink somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And there's like a glory hole, but it's a weird glory hole. It's like a female glory hole where there's some random woman sticking her boobs through like these two holes
The
in
glory
the wall.
hole boobs. I'm like, what are you gonna like? What purpose is that serving? Okay, one thing I do love about this film, all these things we're saying. What's good about this film is you have gags within gags.
Yeah.
So whereas Pink Flamingos would just be, okay, here's a singing arsehole for 2 minutes.
Yeah, basically.
Gag over, move on. Here's Divine eating some shit. Okay, gag done, move on. This will have gags within gags. So you have the wrestling match, for example, with the weird... she's wearing the costume that's like a weird tooth vagina or like a... the big slash she's wearing down the front. So that's a gag in itself. But then she rips the eye out and steps on the eye. So there's multiple things happening in the wrestling scene. And I'm trying to think of other ones. You have...
Well, there's the main scene. I suppose we may as well get to it now. So one of the main characters in the film basically gets a sex change.
Perfect example, yeah.
Yeah, so gets a sex change, comes back, presenting to her lover, look, I've had this sex change. I have a penis now. You like men. So I, thought I'd get this sex change with our lottery money that we won.
Yeah.
And
that £1,000 goes $1,000 goes a long way.
Well, yeah, God, inflation's a bitch, isn't
but
it?
you've got the joke about the sex change, so that she cuts the dick off.
Yeah.
Then the dick's fed to the dog, and this is all like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. It's like The Simpsons, classic Simpsons. It's like layers upon layers,
upon layers, gags within gags.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree totally with that. Yeah. One of the things I was going to say in terms of how the film is structured, what I like about this film compared to pretty much every other film of John Waters that I've seen, even including Female Trouble, is there's three clear acts in this film, and they're all different from each other as well, which I think is cool. So you've got the first act, which is Peggy and her maid basically kill the husband, and then they escape, and then they get stopped by the policeman. That's Act 1. Act 2, they arrive in Mortville, and they're still kind of the main characters, so they're kind of the who the audience, I guess, has the closest kind of association with. And they're with all these kind of trashy people, these horrible people, and then they meet the Queen, etc. Yeah, all this stuff. And then you've got Backwards Day, which just reminded me of Freddy Got Fingered with Backwards Man. Yeah, that's
maybe
all that reminded me of.
By,
But then... And I mean, I should have given a warning about spoilers and stuff. But basically, once the maid dies, then the main characters shift to the lesbian couple, and that's the third act.
Complete twist,
And Peggy, as we said, because she's sort of a snob, immediately she then almost becomes a villain, because then she kind of, I want to be, the princess now. And one of John Waters' favourite films is The Wizard of Oz, clearly. And you see kind of the look that Peggy then chooses to go with kind of for the rest of the film, sort of with the black hair and the black outfit, very, very clearly, Wicked Witch of the West style, with the cauldron and everything. So So yeah, very clear, kind of
yeah.
defined structure.
And that final act, the main characters, it's not just that Peggy becomes a villain. She's hardly in the last act, I would argue. It becomes about the lesbian couple. The main actors, the main people you're supporting, completely change. The maid's killed off, surprise, and then Peggy goes off to the castle, and you don't see it. And then it becomes about that couple and their struggle, and their friends' struggle. So it's a completely different ending to what you're led to believe up until that point.
Yeah, and most of the actors in the film are women.
Yeah,
It's a very weirdly, obviously directed by a man, now a gay man, admittedly, but still, film directed by a man. Basically, pretty much every character bar one or two, and they're really minor characters.
Yeah.
Are all women. So it's actually a super it's a very early example of the kind of film that basically people complain doesn't get made enough today.
Yeah.
It would definitely pass the Bechdel test and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. There's female empowerment. There's lesbian specific empowerment, activism. Yeah.
But like you say, the good thing about John Waters is he's not judging these characters for having, living these different lifestyles.
Yeah.
That, bear in mind, this is the 70s. Mainstream cinema in particular, I mean, that people are more accepting of binary kind of, lifestyles now. But this is very, very different. There's only really there's two heterosexual relationships in the film that I can think of. So it's Peggy and her husband. The husband dies in the first 5 minutes. And the princess with the garbage man.
Garbage man, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's killed off.
And yeah, he dies very, very, very quickly. Herbert.
Yeah.
That's his name.
And I guess you could say the Queen has multiple lovers, the entire male police force.
Yeah.
She just uses as sex objects.
Yeah, it was very, very, very bizarre. One thing I was going to ask you, I suppose it's a good time to ask, I guess. If you had never seen a John Waters film before,
yes,
is this a good one to do for that purpose, or are there better choices, should we say?
I would say, yeah, this is the best example for the reasons I mentioned before about it being the best of both worlds in terms of narrative and shock tactics. It's good for that reason. I would say John Waters really has two parts of his career. There's the early trash period, of which this comes under, and then there's the mainstream ones. I would really be tempted to say you need to watch perhaps two. One being from the early trash period, which would be this film, Desperate Living, and then perhaps from the mainstream period, I would say Cry Baby. I know everyone tends to go for Hairspray, but I personally would say go with Cry Baby. That's just me.
Depends if you're a fan of like musicals or not.
Yeah, if you want, I mean, just straight musical. But if you had to really narrow it down, it would be this one. It would be this one. I know Pink Flamingos is the one everyone puts on the pedestal, but I would say this one. If Pink Flamingos didn't have the dog shit thing, I think everyone would be talking about this film instead of Pink Flamingos.
Yeah, in terms of kind of like, oh my god, this really obscene film. Yeah. I mean, not that there was other stuff other than the dog shit. There's egg eating, and there's the bits with the chickens. And the singing arsehole. And,
but even the chicken thing isn't the first time a chicken gets killed in a John Waters film. And didn't the chicken get killed at the beginning of is it Multiple Maniacs? Right?
Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah, it's one of his early films. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would say, in my opinion, I don't think Pink Flamingos. If you're trying to get into John Waters generally, obviously you have to watch it, but I wouldn't watch it as the first thing you ever see, because then you're gonna be like, fuck's this.
And as you said, his budget grows with each passing film, and his I don't want to say his talents, but let's say his directing ability is very
he gets more experience.
He gets more experience. So by the time you get to this film, it's full blown John Waters with all his bells, whistles, and talents, and it's before he goes mainstream. So it's kind of like the last of the trash. It's and the best of the trash as well.
It's like if you're comparing Limp Bizkit, $3 bill y'all to chocolate starfish.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. That's a very good analogy, and I'm sure John Waters would approve of throwing Limp Bizkit in there. He loves trash.
On that note, as a date movie, Desperate Living, would you say it's a good date movie or a bad date movie?
Oh, bloody hell. That's a...
Because
This is one of the harder ones.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say Pink Flamingo is a definite bad date movie.
Do not watch Pink Flamingos on a first date. Or even a fourth date.
Yeah. Multiple Maniacs as well. Again, more because of the style.
Yeah.
But that's a definite bad date movie.
I would say yes, in the same way that Holy Mountain, when we discuss Holy Mountain, so much happens in this that with the right person, you could have a jolly good time just cackling all the way through. If you're a proper cinephile, analytical person, again, you could enjoy this as well. But I would say if you were going on a first date with somebody who was a cinephile, probably not. But somebody who likes exploitation cinema would probably enjoy this.
Yeah, I think as long as they kind of knew what they were getting themselves into, you could. I agree. Like if it's someone who's at least knows a little bit about old films, or at least knows it's not going to be like super polished. You're not getting like a multi-million-dollar budget here. It's the same with music, in a way, in that. When you listen to music, it's like listening to a polished kind of studio production.
Yeah.
We've spent lots and lots of time on it, and it's really tight, and it's super clean compared to like a demo where it's just band in a garage, one mic, fuzzy as shit. Basically, it's like that essentially. As long as you kind of know what you're getting into and you're in the right headspace, it's fine. With the wrong person, this can go very badly.
Yeah, but also I would say with this film, there's very much, I sort of said it before, there's a punk aesthetic to this.
Oh yeah,
it's gritty, it's raw, but it has a statement to make, of an activism to it, which I think saves it. If it didn't have that, it would be a terrible date movie. But it packs a punch for a reason, and I think that would make it good. Particularly if you're comparing this to, say, your previous date movies. If you're comparing this to your Vomit movies or Salo, this is Lady and the Tramp. This is
a much better date
movie than some of them.
Than Slaughter Vomit Dolls, I would say.
I think I haven't seen them, but I'm willing to bet most movies are.
Yeah, that's kind of like the 0.01%, like in terms of date movies.
This film makes you laugh. Yeah. This film makes you laugh. I think it would be good.
I'd say your favourite part of the film, we've not mentioned this yet, was in one of the flashbacks.
Yeah.
I'll let you say it.
So my favourite bit is they put a baby in a fridge.
Yeah.
And there are far more shocking moments in the film. There are far more serious moments. I don't know why, but there's just some... Basically, in a flashback sequence, a mum comes home. The babysitter doesn't know where the baby is. The mum goes into the kitchen, opens the fridge door, and the baby's in the fridge. I find that immensely hilarious. There's something... I know it's going to sound weird, but there's something about kids crying or getting injured, which is hilarious. If you ever see a kid fall over in the street, it's a little bit funny. And just in my mind, the idea, not only of the baby being in the fridge is funny, but how that scene would have been set up and shot. Like, John Waters has persuaded some mum to let him borrow their child, put it in the fridge, close the door, and then shoot that scene. So that baby's in the fridge. Even if you shoot it straight away, that baby's in there for at least a minute, in the dark. Like, we talked about the kids being naked earlier, and you wouldn't do that now. I mean, that kid isn't... I mean, this is a low-budget film, so it's not like that's an actor child. That's probably just some kid who is now an adult and is probably telling a psychiatrist now about how he's claustrophobic because John Waters locked him in a fridge when he was a baby.
That's someone's actual child.
Yeah, and considering all the other crazy stuff that happens in this film, people vomiting, people being given rabies, talk of rape and insects being eaten, a baby being put in a fridge is tame.
Yeah,
but it's
very true.
It gets me.
Someone cutting off their own fake penis with a pair of scissors
and feeding it to a dog. Some Caligula shit going on.
Yeah,
but the baby in the fridge, I don't know. It just makes me chuckle. Tickles me.
So, not planning on having children anytime soon, then?
Nope. No. And if I do, they're going in the fridge.
It's a good thing Emma doesn't listen to these shows. Right. So, if in fact you are interested in owning this on DVD, there's not a lot of information out there on this. Arrow too busy releasing Hills of Ice Part 2.
What the fuck, Arrow? Release some John Waters films.
Other kind of random, kind of non-culty cult films that Yeah, not sure kind of why they're releasing it. But anyway,
Yeah.
my point being, I'm rambling away. It's not really that freely available on DVD. Now, it's released by New Line, which kind of makes sense in a way, I guess. You know, if John Waters is going to work for any kind of major studio, I guess
Yeah.
New Line kind of, you know, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street and kind of people like that kind of studio. So it's available region 1 through them, and this region 2 DVD that we watched just now that Tom
Yes.
owns, it's what language is this? Is this Spanish or
I have no idea. What's it called? Desperate Living is translated as what?
Viva Desesperamente, or however you say this. But anyway,
Some Mediterranean. It's so bizarre and disappointing. I'm pretty sure I've seen in the BFI shop like Multiple Maniacs released.
Multiple Maniacs is released through Criterion. So
Why the hell isn't this released? like when people talk about the classic John Waters films, they don't mention Multiple Maniacs. They mention the Trash Trilogy, Pink Flamingos, Female Trouble, Desperate Living. I swear, I think Female Trouble might be in English, but my Pink Flamingos and Desperate Living are like Italian. I mean, you can trust the Italians, can't you, to get this shit out there? I had to track that down on the internet, and then it's not in the film's in English, but obviously the DVD cover and stuff isn't.
yeah, I mean, and his newest stuff is obviously available on DVD. But
Anything from Hairspray onwards, sure.
There's a distinct lack of kind of any of his older stuff. I mean, so you got Multiple Maniacs as Criterion. Polyester's about to be released on Criterion in the UK. Criterion in America, they released some of his films.
Yes, and there's definitely a market for John Waters films. He's up there with like Lloyd Kaufman and David Lynch when people talk about the classic cult directors. So release his shit, people. God damn it. Like the early stuff. That's what we want, you know?
Yeah, come on, Arrow.
Yeah, come on, Arrow. Stop pissing around with Hills of Ice 2.
Yeah, get your fucking act together, dude. Come on.
It must be a contractual thing. There must be something weird tied up and being production hell or whatever you want to call it.
Probably. Oh, Criterion. Criterion are clearly the people who kind of release this shit. So they're the ones you got to wait for. Cool. So that's been our voyage into the world of John Waters. Been really fun.
Lots of fun.
I hope you guys have learned a lot about kind of the oeuvre of John Waters. John Waters, I mean, he hasn't made any bad films per se, I don't think.
No, I don't
the ones
think
I've
so.
seen. So really, any of his films are kind of worth watching. And he's an awesome guy.
He's hilarious. I got the good fortune of seeing what I guess you would call stand-up. I went to he was doing a sort of publicity thing for a book he had done called Car Sick, where he hitchhiked across America, and it's all his stories of meeting these real-life crazy folk who would pick up John Waters. And he's hilarious live. I mean, you know, like how Kevin Smith is more about stand-up now than he is directing.
Yeah, and
John
smoking
Waters,
weed. Yeah.
John Waters is kind of like that. He's an amazing person to listen to his stories. Hilarious man, gentleman.
Yeah. So another reason to get DVDs is his commentaries are amazing. Apparently,
witty motherfucker.
Have you listened to the commentary on this one? 'Cause
No, I
apparently
dare
it's
not
on
to,
there.
in case it's all in bloody Italian. No, I haven't listened to the commentary on Viva la Desperado, whatever the fuck it is. Yeah.
Apparently, you know, his commentaries are awesome.
Yeah.
So on that note, I want to thank Tom very, very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
I will definitely have you on again very soon.
This has been one of my favourite ones.
Wicked. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Very much so. And I hope you guys have liked the show today. And we'll see you on the very, very next show for more of the worst date movies ever.